Before the Great War, Morgantown was home to both the students of Vault-tec University and Morgantown High School, as well as a prime stopping point for the many miners and soldiers who passed through. To combat the gasoline crisis that the country was facing, the city featured a state-of-the-art monorail system that encircled the entire city, with locations such as the airport and university receiving their own dedicated stops. The people living here, particularly those renting property and running their own businesses, were struggling to keep up with the increasing rent and automation of human jobs. Both stylists and tattoo artists seemed to be hit the hardest, but this could have been because the students simply weren't interested in getting their hair cut or getting tattoos. What they were interested in was getting drunk. And Lewis, a VTU chemistry student from the Eta Psi house, had an idea. In order to fund his obsession with Nuka-Cola, he created a high-proof distilled spirit and mixed it with Nuka-Cola. After juggling with the names Nuka Hole, Nuka Mash, and Nuka Brew, he eventually settled on the name Nuka Shine. Lewis's friend, Judy Lowell, the president of the Eta Psi house, became involved with the project, later dubbed the Nukashine initiative. Although she was concerned with the legal aspects of the project, she continued to help. After initial testing in the Eta Psi basement, Lewis rented out the cellar of Big Al's tattoo parlor on a 10-year contract, upping the scale of the project and converting the cellar into a speakeasy, somewhere the students could come and enjoy the Nukashine without worry of being discovered. And Alice, the owner of Big Al's, was struggling financially, and with this new income, she was more than happy to keep a few secrets. As the project grew, the vast quantity of alcohol was simply too much for any human to test on a regular basis. Luckily, Lewis's mother worked for General Atomics, and shortly after his request, a robo-brain was provided. Whether it was acquired through legal means or not was never discussed. The robo-brain was given the name Biv E. Ridge and began quality testing the Nukashine. It is unclear as to whether or not Biv's drunken manner is a result from testing such a vast quantity of alcohol, or if he was programmed to be the friendly drunken robot that he is. Lewis, along with Judy and Biv, outsourced their Nukashine to the Pi Kappa Mu House, a fraternity of Vault-tec University students known for their daily parties and pranks, which included removing the head of the Vault Boy statue. As ideal as all of this sounds, a product that people wanted, a discreet location where prying eyes couldn't see, and a workforce that did everything that needed to be done, its downfall was a secret ingredient that Lewis and Judy, for some reason, felt the need to include. Inside the back room of the speakeasy is a locked door, and on the other side the ingredient becomes clear: nuclear waste. You can imagine the kind of damage consuming this byproduct would do to the human body, and the side effects of drinking Nukashine, according to Biv, are illness, addiction, permanent brain damage, the list goes on. So if knowing this, why would Lewis and Judy allow the other students to consume the drink? As for the relationship between the two frat houses, it would seem that Eta Psi was where the hard-working, nose-to-the-grindstone type of student would stay, while Pi Kappa Mu was for the lazy and irresponsible. These were complete opposites, and because of this, they didn't connect. They simply had nothing in common. That was until Lewis created Nukashine, a lethal drink aimed specifically to the students that love to party. There's a terminal entry on Ted's computer, one of the students of Pi House, where Judy politely asks Ted and his friends to not make any more cheap jokes at Lewis's expense. It's difficult to believe that two chemistry students couldn't anticipate the kind of damage the drink would do. There is a note to Lewis from Judy that says she misses the old Lewis, not the crazy Lewis. His obsession with Nuka-Cola could quite easily be placed above human life, especially when those humans are just bullies who he can exploit for money. I don't know what reason Judy had other than treating the entire ordeal as an experiment, and simply wanted to witness firsthand the type of damage consuming nuclear waste would do. Inside Pie House, we can see exactly that. Sprawled throughout the house are many skeletons who appear to have died in the middle of a party. They all seem to be holding beverages, wearing costumes, and just sitting in some of the strangest positions. Downstairs in the basement is a laundry room, and on the floor are two skeletons, both handcuffed to the rail with a holotape between them. Listening to the holotape reveals that these two skeletons were pledges, new initiates currently going through the house's trials. As a final initiation, they were given a drink of Nuka Shine and had to spend the duration of the party handcuffed inside the laundry room. The narrator of the holotape states that, while his friend Max Posey drank the Nuka Shine, he did not, and as a result, he was the only one left alive. Max, along with the others, all succumbed to the effects of Nuka Shine. The narrator mentions that the others made a specific sound that still haunts him. I'm not entirely sure what these sounds were, but my guess would have been retching, choking, and gasping for breath as their bodies shut down. The fate of the narrator wasn't dehydration or starvation, but blood loss. Beside his skeleton is a rusty saw, and we can see that he was successful in removing his own hand, freeing himself from the shackles, but also condemning himself as well. These actions went unnoticed thanks to the Great War. Alicia Parker, one of the survivors from Vault-tec University, recorded the events shortly after, and it's thanks to her we know what happened. After the bombs, Morgantown was a living hell. A few of the students were fortunate enough to have survived inside the university, but after a few weeks when rations were beginning to dwindle, they were forced outside. When they emerged, they found themselves in the perfect real-world scenario they had been training for at VTU. Some of the students with overseer training took the lead, and a few of the Greek houses started communities. The largest of them, Kappa something, Alicia doesn't quite remember, started absorbing the smaller houses and slowly expanded their own territory. Many students were lost during the first year, some to radiation poisoning, others to typical things like hunger and thirst. There were also instances of students falling victim to animal attacks, most notably the giant rat in the VTU courtyard that the other students never managed to track down. Even with all of these combined, the numbers simply don't come close to the amount lost during the House Wars. In the beginning, the students seemed to be cooperating with one another. That was until the Radaway shortages, where hair started falling out and their skin began to change. After a cache was discovered in a nearby pharmacy, students argued over who it belonged to. Bullets were exchanged, and the first student death by a fellow peer was recorded. This was the new Morgantown, a battle zone where only the ruthless survived. The two biggest houses were the Roof House and Street House, their names reflecting the territory of which they controlled. Without Radaway, the effects of intense radiation soon took their toll. Kids simply dropped to the ground on a daily basis, their hair and skin peeled away, and only the most powerful houses were able to keep order among their ranks. This was only possible by eliminating the smaller groups of students and stealing their supplies. This raged on until only two houses remained, the Street House and the Roof House, and these two houses did not see eye to eye. The Street House students surrounded Roof House's territory in an attempt to starve them out. Charles, the leader of Roof House, sent out scouting parties using the monorail to access the other rooftops and upper levels of apartments. The scouts would always return with more food and ammunition, and he was pretty certain that his group would outlive the others, and as a blatant form of mockery, would toss his empty food containers down to the streets. Vanessa, the leader of Street House, was persistent in her attacks against Roof House. However, due to their position on the ground, would suffer heavier losses during each battle. It was clear that they had to do something else, and a plan to scale one of the rooftops and take control away from Charles was put in action. This plan was swiftly thwarted. The ladder they used to climb had been covered with oil and left as a trap. Those climbing were taken by surprise and set on fire. It's unclear if this was the breaking point for Street House. You can imagine what this would have done for their morale, and in response to this heinous act, retaliated. A note found in the remnants of Street House's campsite told that they had finally had enough. The elites who stared down at them from their brick and mortar thrones would finally get what they deserved. It is suggested that Street House set fire to the buildings and smoked Roof House out, perhaps even burning them alive. Those that didn't want to get involved hid themselves away on unoccupied rooftops. They were known as the Roof Dwellers. Two in particular, Alicia Parker, the author of the holotapes, and Victor Hibb, who used to help the very students trying to kill him cheat on their exams. Their positions were directly across the street from one another, and when it was safe, they would talk. At one point, Victor tried to arrange a meeting between them, but Alicia was hesitant and, after some thought, disregarded the idea altogether. She also seems to have survived by growing her own food, limiting the need to travel down to the surface and face unnecessary threats. Victor had no such luxury and instead focused on his work, using the telescope to gaze at stars and dream of a better place. As time went on, Alicia succumbed to radiation poisoning, leaving Victor on his own. While Alicia's fate is known, Victor's is not, which brings the question, what happened to Victor? It's quite likely that the Roof House students spotted him and either killed him or recruited him, or in his weakened state from a combination of radiation and starvation, fell from the rooftop. Throughout the city are the remains of other students. Some wrote poetry, while others simply waited to die. By 2103, Morgantown is a graveyard, with only ghouls, scorched, and robots inhabiting the area. While Roof House could have been destroyed in the fire, the remnants could have continued fighting, and their positions may have even switched. We just don't know. But what we do know is that both houses are now gone, their lives lost to radiation, and their holotapes, notes, and skeletons are all that remain. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you would like to see in a later video, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. With that said, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.